live. What are you doing? Not live right now.
Good morning, LinkedIn. I'm Mel Johnson from the Sussex Social. I'm a social media coach and consultant, and I am back for the next series of my LinkedIn Lives, answering lots of questions around social media and other things that small businesses and business owners struggle with. I am here today with Lucy Brandram, who I will let introduce herself in a minute, but today we're going to share with you why we think it's so important to grow your email list, even if you have a really small business, and nurture that list and share some simple tips and tactics on how you can keep growing it and get started. So Lucy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi Mel, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Lucy. I run 76 Media. I'm a Facebook and Instagram ads manager and social media coach. So yeah, I work quite a lot with email lists and help clients run ads to grow their list and help them grow their list organically as well. So yeah, definitely got quite a lot of experience as to how vital it is, and I've grown my own list. So
cool, and we've worked together on a couple of things as well, haven't we, Lucy? So hopefully we will be sharing some of our magic wisdom this morning. So the first thing I wanted to I think we want to stress is why list building is so important. I was presenting at a conference the other day and somebody put their hand up and said, oh, we send a weekly newsletter, like, do you think that's old-fashioned? And I said, absolutely not, for some of the reasons that we're going to go into. So I think firstly, I think sometimes email marketing is deemed to be probably not that sexy, and maybe a little bit old hat. Firstly, I just wanted to say it definitely isn't. Most people will have their emails open all of the time. Global open rates, according to MailChimp, average around 18%. And that doesn't account for the people who are just seeing your name kind of pop up in their inbox regularly, so you stay in front of mind. Also, average engagement on social media, particularly on Facebook, is below 1%. So it's a really good way of reminding your audience that you are there. Lucy, what's your kind of take on why do you think list building is so important, or why do we know that it's so?
Yeah, so one really big reason for me is the fact that you own that data. I hear lots and lots of stories, I'm sure you do, Mel, as well, about people's Instagram accounts being shut down, their Facebook ads being restricted. And essentially, you don't own that data. The social media company does. If you run a LinkedIn newsletter, you're still not your data. No. So it's really important that actually, if you're building your own business, that you build that email list. And those email addresses are yours. These people have given you their permission to email them, to contact them regularly. And I think that's such an important part of your marketing, really. It's, particularly the way that things happen today. So
I 100% agree with you. I mean, I think the fact that LinkedIn and Twitter are pushing their version of email marketing just really highlights kind of why it's still so important. And you're not reliant on the algorithm to see your content as well. And I think one of the things that we want to highlight is that a lot of people who are watching will be within the professional services sector. And, unless you've got something that's relatively cheap, doesn't take people a lot to kind of think about when they purchase, something for to keep your kids entertained while they're at home or whatever it is, you've probably got, and it requires people to do quite a little bit of work for themselves. There's probably quite a long, you've probably got quite a long way to go from them buying something off a social media post. The consideration is massive. Once those people have given you that email address, they've kind of thought it's sort of signaling to you that actually, we want to know a little bit more about you and what we do. So essentially, it is a warmer lead, and you can use your email marketing to kind of track who's warm, and give those kind of opportunities to make those warmer sales. So I think what do you need to get started is an important point. So Lucy, do you want to give us
so
your own journey and what you think you need to get started?
So I guess what you need to get started, the first thing is to think about what email marketing system you're actually going to use. And I think key is that actually there are quite a lot of really effective free options out there. At this point, you don't need to be investing and paying for an email marketing system. MailChimp and MailerLite are two that I know that people have used really successfully. I use MailerLite. It's really easy to use. The support is fantastic. And if you want to just create quite a simple looking email, where maybe if you're a service-led business, that might be the way that you go, it's quite easy to do that as well. And I think one thing that actually is probably less about what you need to get started, but really is that once you've created that content for your email, you can repurpose it as well. You can, across your social media channels, across a website, across a blog. It's part of, you know, it's a general part of your marketing, really. Yeah. So it's got legs, I guess, is one of it's maybe an old-fashioned way of sort of talking about it. But yeah, you can repurpose it. It's really useful. It's not something that's just going to kind of have a one-off use.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk more about repurposing, because I think it's quite important, and it's one of the questions I get asked a lot, because I think particularly if you're doing your own marketing, you're so close to your business that you kind of feel a bit like a broken record sometimes, and that you're saying the same thing, and actually, you know, people aren't necessarily retaining that information. One of the really key things, though, is that quite often I work with businesses, or I sign up to things, and I don't even get a notification that I've signed up to something. And then it will be 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 days, whatever it is, and I'll get a email out of the blue from them because I've been put onto their mailing list, which obviously I've opted into. But I think the key here is it's really important, first of all, to identify what your goals are around that kind of email, having that email list. Particularly, as we'll talk about in a minute, is if you're actually spending time and money on growing that. It's a case of thinking, okay, what do I actually really want to achieve with this? You know, what am I going to be saying? And I think one of the things that is really key, and this is across social media as well, is what's realistic for me to do. Like, how often is it realistic for me to email them? Because and I've been guilty of this. I'll put my hands up. It's, you know, we can all run these big social media campaigns, but at some point, and then life gets busy. You don't have the time. You know, you're doing 2 emails a week, and suddenly you don't have the time because what you're doing is working. So I think it's really key to just put those, or work with somebody to put those kind of I guess goals and milestones in place, and say, right, these are the things that I'm going to be talking about each week, or if you're doing a particular series, you know, and it doesn't even need to be each week, it might be each month. It's really dependent on you and your business, but it's just having that kind of strategy and idea of what you're trying to achieve, what your customers need to hear from you, and what you're saying. And then I think one of the things you obviously need to think about is how you're going to get people onto that list. Because particularly if they don't know you, they're not necessarily going to want you rocking up in their inbox once a week.
No, it's a precious thing at giving out an email address, isn't it, these days, I think, because so many people are kind of clamoring for it, really. So how are you going to find them? You need to have something, you need some kind of lead magnet, don't you, really, to get started? Something that actually you've built because you've designed because you know that your customers need it. You've understood what your customers' problems are, and you've created either a quiz or top 5 tips or a checklist, something like that, that's quite easy to read, but it's really useful and it's got real value, and it really represents your business well, because it might be the first time that people have actually seen anything that you've created. And they're going to save this as well, because if you think about how often you sign up to lists because you've seen something, a guide to hashtags maybe, or, you know, top 5 tips to write an effective email, that kind of, you know, whatever it is, the things that really resonate for you, that's when you've downloaded it, you're going to keep it. And so it's another reminder about you and your business for your potential customers.
I think that's a really good point. And I think one of the ways that, you know, I think quite often we all sit there scratching our heads thinking, what do people need? And obviously quite often
it's tricky,
things. But actually, one of the things that can work well is finding that. It is obviously using that list to almost find that information. So like in the past, I've run kind of survey-based competitions where I've put together a short survey. So I have to confess, I love a survey. I put together a short survey, you know, asking people about what they want, and in return, they get, you know, for me, it might be a social media review or a power hour or something like that. But, you know, you might give, if you're a coach or a consultant, somebody a free coaching session, whatever it might be. You don't necessarily have to do this, but it's kind of, that can kind of entice people to join your list. So that's something which that or a competition or an offer, what I kind of call short-term list builders. So you can get a lot, and webinars, I hate that word, but you know, you understand what I mean, can really work well for sort of building those things in the short term.
Yeah, I've done competitions.
People actually want and need from you.
Yeah, I've done competitions. I've sent out little freebies after people have filled in my surveys, because I do find surveys really useful. They're a nice, interesting way. It's got real value for you because you're finding out about your customers, and people like being asked their opinions and what they want.
That's the point I was going to make. I think people do like to be asked, and also I think sometimes it can, that type of approach, or I mean, I remember when I launched an online course, and one of the questions I asked people, would they have a chat with me just to sort of validate my ideas?
Yeah.
And quite a few people came forward, and I think, you know, they were probably people I maybe wouldn't have necessarily reached out to. But I think they were more willing to have a chat, because I think sometimes when we feel like we're being sold to, that creates a bit of a barrier.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
a lot of people hate sales, which is totally a conversation for another day. Okay, so so we've talked a lot about the kind of what, and then we've talked about, so I guess we've talked about lead magnets and as being one of the ways that you can grow that list.
Yeah.
Outside of that, so because you've created this, you might create this brilliant lead magnet, you stick it on your website, you know, you're then very reliant on SEO to help for that to be found organically. Which, you know, unless you've got lots and lots of organic content, or you're running Google ads or whatever it might be, you know, particularly if you're in a competitive market, people aren't necessarily naturally going to find that information straight away. So I think here is really kind of important for us to talk about how some of the strategies you might use to grow that list. We're going to talk a little bit about using paid ads to grow that list. I will leave that bit to you, Lucy, because it's not my area of expertise. I know there's some really good tactics, and actually it can be a really cost-effective way of using ads. But I think just from a kind of organic perspective, I think, you know, telling people about your offer, telling people
definitely.
Networking, that you've got that, sharing on social media and adding that to your profiles and bios can work really well. If you're sending out regular emails, I think sharing snippets of what's in there or repurposing the content so you can kind of drip feed it over a certain period of time can entice people to want to find out more. And just, you know, talking about it as much as possible and using that as a really simple call to action in your posts can work really well. Yeah. So Lucy, do you want to talk a little bit about how we could, if we wanted to put some money behind growing that, what we could do?
Definitely. So one thing I'd probably say with the organic side of it, and it's useful for your ads as well, is to, you know, think about how many different assets you might want to create for your social media posts, and to keep talking about it and talking about it and talking about it until it kind of feels like you're talking to your blue in the face, really. But that's the kind of repetition that it often takes for people to click that button and sign up and download, or just to be in the right mind space to actually do it, because we all know how busy life is these days.
And also think, I think we've got to remember that quite often, I mean, I'm literally trying to ban myself from doing this, because the amount of times I scroll through LinkedIn and I'm like, oh, that looks really interesting, and then I get distracted because I'm standing in front of the cooker trying to cook the kids' dinner or something.
Exactly.
Of course, I go back to it, and then I'm like, no, it would have been a much better use of my time if I'd done what I tell everybody to do, which actually sat down for 20 minutes, went through all that, commented on the good stuff, and clicked through and looked at the things that I actually want to.
Yeah, but I think we all use it like that. We're all trying to kind of, you know, shoehorn all these different things into our days, and whether we're, you know, whatever it is, we've got 5 minutes while we're waiting for the school run, or we're cooking, or watching TV and doing two screens at once. And so you've only got half an eye on the things that you're looking at on your phone, haven't you? Whatever it is, whether you're buying stuff or interested in a download. So that's why it takes so many repetitions of that of telling people about your email, your lead magnet, before we actually manage to do it. I think sometimes it's helpful to just think about how you consume content and how distracted you are all the time. And so when you think, God, I've spoken about this so often, but actually just try and relate it back to yourself and think about how you do things. And then you'll, it won't feel like you're being so repetitive, because you're not really. So let me tell you a little bit about the paid side of it. So absolutely, Facebook ads can be a really useful way to build your list. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can run a campaign without a website. You can use the lead gen objective, and there are lead forms that Facebook ads actually have that you can use. But from my experience and from what I've heard from talking to other ads managers and people who've used this, having a landing page on your own site will be much more effective. Generally, again, because you own it. So you're going to need to go into Facebook ads, and you'll choose a sales objective, and you'll set up a pixel for your website. And the objective that you choose is quite important, because if you're choosing the sales objective, that's asking Facebook to look for people who are most likely to sign up from your audience. It might come down to budget, and you might find that maybe you don't have quite enough budget for that objective, because each objective has a different price point. So you could always try just using a traffic objective and landing pages, and that might work as well. You're going to need a variety of creatives, but what you might find is the creatives could be the ones that you've used for your organic campaigns. They don't have to be different. You can repurpose them. In fact, using the ones that you've used organically will help you understand which of them are likely to be most popular and most effective. So that's quite useful. And the other thing you're going to need is a specific landing page on your website, because once people click on your ad, they're going to go straight to your website. So you're going to need to make sure that your website loads quickly. You've got that really simple landing page there, so there's no distractions on it. There's one really clear call to action. Your only option is to subscribe. And then once people have clicked on that link and they've subscribed, you're going to need a thank you page. And then you could also include another call to action on the thank you page, and maybe trying to sell a smaller product or something that's easy for people to buy right away if they're already quite warm to you.
Yeah, I think one of the things as well, just to go back to something you said at the beginning, I think making sure you've got the foundations in place before you run. So you've got that landing page. It's optimized for mobile. It loads quickly, because if things don't load up quickly, people are gone and they're not coming back. But just to go back to what you said at the beginning is, do you want to kind of explain for people watching what the Facebook pixel is? Because quite often, I think I often mention this to people and they kind of look at me.
It's a bit
strangely. It's nothing to do with photos.
No, nothing to. So the Facebook pixel is a piece of code that Facebook has produced. It's free, and you install it on your website, and it tracks the visitors that come to your website. Now, it's not as effective as it was a couple of years ago. There was an iPhone update which allowed people to choose whether they wanted to be tracked by the pixel or not. So when you go in to install the pixel on your website, you'll see that there are a couple of other things that you're going to need to do as well. Set up events, verify your website. And that's Facebook's way of getting around the fact that 80% of iPhone users, I think it is, have chosen to opt out of tracking. So it's still definitely worth having that pixel on your website. And I would say, if you're thinking about running Facebook ads, but you're not ready to do it yet, just install that pixel, go through into your business manager and go into the events manager and install the pixel and set up the events and verify your website. And this might not make much sense to you as I say it now, but if you start to have a dig around in Facebook, there are some really helpful guides there for you. And that means that Facebook will start tracking visitor data already. And so when you do want to run ads, you've got a really good audience there ready to use. So don't be intimidated by the pixel. It's quite easy to set up, and if you can't do it, ask your web developer and they'll be able to do it for you.
I think there is a similar thing in LinkedIn as well.
There is a link.
Yeah,
a bit of a LinkedIn widget that you can for WordPress. It certainly works as a widget, and I think the Facebook pixel does on WordPress as well. But yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I think we're whizzing through. If anybody's got any questions, then do post them in the chat, and we will answer them at the end, or we will come back to them. So I think, as well as one of the things we wanted to talk about is that your email list can be a really good way of supporting your growth on social media as well, and highlighting what you're doing on there. Because I mean, a prime example is obviously we're doing LinkedIn Live today. We've emailed, both of us emailed our lists and told people what we were doing, because actually people might not have been on LinkedIn this week. They might not use it very often. It gives you that content to talk about, but also it can drive people back to your social media. Again, you've got more touch points for marketing then, and people are just much more likely to get to know you, and be reminded that you're there and engage if they want to. So I think having that and telling people to follow you on social media. A lot of the email marketing tools, you can just put your social media buttons at the bottom, so they're always coming up. And if you've got a LinkedIn or a Facebook group, you can use that. You can use your email marketing to drive people towards that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a way of kind of closing the loop, I guess, isn't it, really, Mel? That when you've got new posts going live, and you might want to give a little bit more information, a bit more value into your email, but actually if people go on to follow you, find your post on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever, they learn a bit more, and it all just kind of helps it along, really, doesn't it? I think so. Will help your engagement rate.
Okay. We've got a question. We've got a couple of questions actually, which I'm going to I think one of the key points around as well is just repurposing content. So, emails can take quite a while to write. And I think, I think probably a lot of people are guilty of this. You might write an email, or you might write a blog, or you might record a video, and actually that you see that piece of content in isolation. I don't think that piece of content shouldn't exist in isolation. You can cut it and repurpose it for multiple different things. So if your email is talking about setting social media objectives, for example, if you've got 5 in there, that could be 5 posts that you took, of things that you talk about, or you could just pick 2 or 3 and kind of use that to entice people to go back and find out a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is one of the key things about email marketing and social media marketing is trying to join it all together, really, so that actually you're not constantly reinventing the wheel. You can just keep repurposing whatever it is. If it's 5 content tips of what to talk about in November, for example, that makes a really nice social media post, and it can make it a blog post as well. So it's definitely something that it shouldn't be that you're spending hours on and you only send it out to your list and you never use it again. It's use it and repurpose it. Absolutely.
So we've got 2 questions. I think that's probably enough from us, Lucy, actually. So I've got a couple of questions here. So Claire Griffiths, who is a very keen email marketer, she says herself, I love email marketing and happy with my open rate. Do you have any tips on how to increase click rates? Or is it down to making sure the content you produce is valuable to your audience? That's a good question.
It is, isn't it?
Lucy?
Well, I don't know, for increasing click rates and particularly sales emails, some tips that I've read are making the clicks, the links themselves really visual. So try using buttons, maybe brightly coloured buttons, making it super obvious to people exactly what you want them to do. That's something that I've seen being used and I've tested. and that has worked quite effectively. I suspect also a lot of it is about the value of the content that you're producing and making sure that actually the way that so it's probably about your tone of voice and that you're really enticing people into making them want to click that link, which is easier said than done sometimes, definitely. But
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's probably a couple of key points I'd suggest.
I think for me, it's kind of making those emails quite personal. So some people, say, particularly if they don't use a piece of email marketing software, are like, oh, I feel that email marketing is really impersonal, and actually you can, put people's, you can auto tag, so it's got people's names on it.
Yeah, definitely.
The principles I was always taught was to have kind of start off with like a little bit of personal content. Doesn't need to be chapter and verse, but just, maybe a little bit about something you've experienced or what you're doing. And I think I don't want to get too technical here as well. Segmenting can work really well. So if you've got an audience that have signed up for different things, then, blanket emailing them about everything, this is where it can get a bit more complicated. It's not necessarily something that they're going to be interested in. So prime example is that if you've got people who've already bought a particular course that you might be selling or a downloadable freebie, they're probably not going to download it again.
Yeah.
And adding a share, I think asking people to share those emails as well can really improve your rate.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think those would just be, but as you said, I think having those visual call to actions is really important. And I think getting your timings right. Because
that's a good point.
A brilliant offer, and you're sending it out to everybody at, I don't know, 6 p.m. when they're trying to cook the kids' dinner, to go back to that.
Yeah.
It's really, they might think that offer's brilliant, but again, it's front of mind. They might not necessarily go back to it. So I think all of those can be kind of good tactics to just kind of monitor and measure.
One other thing I thought of, actually, sorry, Mel. Well, a couple of things. Timings, actually, yeah. I go early in the mornings. That seems to work well because it's kind of you're at the top of someone's inbox. Yeah. Everyone's audiences are different, really, aren't they? But storytelling, I use that a lot in my emails and just start off so that actually you imagine. So firstly, I imagine that I'm talking to one person. So I'm just writing that email for one particular person. And I'm telling them a story, really. And I do use those personal tags throughout the copy so that it might say, I'm actually talking to you, Mel. Yes, and I use that. That quite suits me in the way that I market on my clients as well, because a lot of what I do is one-to-one work. So
I think it's a really good tip. So Kelly has also said, I've recently stopped asking for sign-ups to receive my guide. I put it out for free. It felt really good. I'm hoping that people use the guide to find out more about me and sign up when they feel connected to me. What are your thoughts there? I think, Kelly, I've not seen your guide, but I think if you've spent quite a long time creating that content, and by the sounds of it, it shares like you're probably sharing an awful lot of value in your other content as well. So I would say I think it's perfectly. I think you should be asking for email addresses in return for that, because I think what we have to remember is that everybody that we're speaking to is busy, and quite often people really need to be told how to take the next step and almost what to do. So I think by saying I'm putting my guide out for free and I'm not asking for any data, and then expecting them to sign up later, you're kind of reliant on people remembering that they need to take that action and signposting them elsewhere. So I would say also, I think by asking for those sign-ups, you're probably going to get a higher quality of person who actually is interested in your services from the onset, and you get them into that list, and then you can nurture them that way.
Yeah, I would agree, Mel, actually, I think, because I'd imagine I know how much work it does take to create a guide or a lead magnet or whatever it is. And I think once you've decided to do that and give away your email, you've already started to make that bit of a commitment. So I would say definitely if people didn't want it and weren't happy giving their email, they wouldn't do it. But actually, when they do, they're already kind of saying, actually, Kelly, we want to hear a little bit more. from you, and that's where your your welcome sequence of emails can kick in before they hit your list. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I would be doing it, definitely.
I think we most business owners sit in two camps. They're either everything they do is sell, or they kind of don't really sell very much, sell at all. So Matt Mason is asking us, he's a bit out of date with email marketing, apparently. I'm sure that's not the case. Is titles important when reaching the inbox, avoiding spam and open rates, e.g. avoid the word offer in the title? I think titles are really important. I know from kind of personal experience and with my clients, like when I've used a title that's, I think titles are not my strong point when it comes to writing copy. I think a how in the title works really well, because people instantly think this is going to tell me how to do something and it's going to be quite quick. Around words like offer and that kind of sales type thing, I think it's very much dependent on your business. I mean, I don't really work with e-commerce, if I'm honest, but I would, if somebody sends me an email and says there's a 50% sale or I can get an instant offer, I'm probably more inclined to open that email. I think if you are promoting a specific offer, it almost needs to be part of a longer campaign where people know that they're going to get that offer at certain times, so you're nurturing them. But I think the key here with all these things is really just kind of testing what works.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes quite quirky subject lines can get people's attention, as long as they're relevant and they're not just, quite quirky.
Yeah,
and quirky. But
you need to be a bit quirky, or a bit of a quirky business, because otherwise it's kind of
yeah.
I hope that answers the question. And Pip, timing is so important. So many people send a newsletter on a Friday and I never have time to read them. Yeah, I think that's a really valuable point. I think when it comes to timing, it's really thinking about when your audience are going to read that content, and also what type of content. So for example, if I send an email out at 8 p.m. in the evening, no one's really going to want to read about what I'm probably going to want to read about what I'm talking about. Whereas if I was a baby sleep coach, for example, that might be a really good time for me, because parents who are having a bit of a nightmare might, oh God, I've just had an awful bedtime, and then this has popped up. Actually, that might really help me. So I think, again, all of these things that are testing them. I don't know about in MailerLite, in MailChimp, it will tell you what's the best time to send your email based on your audience and on the certain days. And it will also, I can't think I know a lot of people don't like MailChimp, but it will also set that according to time zones as well.
So on MailerLite, you can do it according to time zones. I don't think, unless I'm on the free plan, it might be on the paid for plan, that it will tell you when your audience is online. Mine doesn't. It offers lots of tracking and things like that, but it doesn't on the free plan. So I've kind of tested mine and based it on the fact that people aren't really going to want to hear from me in the evenings. It's just what I offer is just not what you want to read about in the evenings, really. So
Matt's obviously not that out of date with email marketing, because he said another good tip, I think, is do not schedule on the hour, go 5 minutes before or after.
Okay.
I think there's probably a good case for that, because if you're signed up to we've obviously just talked about timing being important. Actually, if I'm signed up to 10 different marketing emails, the chances are, if they're targeting people like me, then our habits are probably going to be similar.
Yeah.
Or actually,
it's interesting, isn't it?
5 or 10 minutes before. But I think, again, testing and tracking. And Matt said, A/B test different titles. I mean, Lucy will know all about A/B testing because of with Facebook ads. But
yes, definitely.
I think that can again, just testing out those different titles and tracking them. And then just over time really working out what's working well for you and your business, what's getting the most open rates and what's getting through click-throughs. Oh, Claire Griffiths also avoid the first day of the month. This is what I would wish people
this is brilliant.
But I think that's, I would imagine that's because quite a lot of people send a monthly newsletter.
I guess, and if you're doing a weekly one, you're just going to get swamped out and just disappear, aren't you? So that's a good one. 5 minutes before on the hour and avoid the first day of the month. Lovely. Thanks for those tips.
That's brilliant. I think Lucy, have you got anything you want to add? And I don't know if anyone's got any more questions, but thank you very much for joining me. Thanks everybody for watching. A couple of people have asked for the replay. It does stay on LinkedIn. And yeah, if you've got any questions or you want to have a chat with Lucy and I, we love to talk, so we are around, and I will kind of follow up with some more interesting stuff. But I will we will see you all soon.
Yeah, and thanks very much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.